back to my channel, or welcome to my channel if you are new. So today's video is going to be everything you need to know, or all the books you may want to read if you want to get into reading. I've seen this video floating about a little bit, and I just thought that I would give you guys my recommendations for someone if they asked me what would you recommend to read if you wanted to get into reading, and this is basically going to be my answer. A lot of them are series, purely because I feel like to really get into reading, a series is a really kind of good place to start. So yeah, a lot of these are series. However, I do have a couple of kind of standalone books. Some of them are kind of to do with the same authors. A lot of these books, yes, you probably would have seen me talk about before on my channel. These are also some of my all-time favourite books that I feel like will kind of cover anybody's favourite genre. If you are someone who likes crime, you've got I've got some of that in here. If you like fantasy, I've got some of that in here. If you like drama, romance, I've got some of that in here as well. So I hope you guys enjoy, and if you have any recommendations for any books for anyone to get into reading, definitely leave them in the comments down below so people can go check them out. But without further ado, I hope you guys enjoy this video. If you do, don't forget to give the video a big old thumbs up, subscribe down below, and don't forget to turn on the little post notification bell so you're notified every time I upload a new video. And with that said, let's just jump straight into the video. Also, I'm really sorry about the background. It looks really boring, and it kind of is, but the problem is where my bookshelves are, I just don't get really good lighting. Here I'm like sitting in front of my window and my ring light, whereas when I film in that corner, it just doesn't do me justice. I don't really know where to start. I'm just gonna kind of jump in, kind of no particular order, but these are just some of the books that I would recommend if you are getting into reading. Books I would recommend to anybody who loves a fantasy book or kind of a fantasy genre is the Cruel Prince series, also known as the Folk of the Air series by Holly Black. I really enjoyed this. Okay, I'm gonna tell you guys the truth, I haven't actually finished the series. However, I loved the first book. I stopped reading the second book, but I really want to go back into it. So at some point this is gonna be back on my kind of radar to pick up again. I read The Cruel Prince, which is the first book in the trilogy, a couple of years ago now, and I loved it. It was actually one of the first fantasy books I ever picked up and read, and it was just one of those books that I really enjoyed. Fantasy definitely isn't for everyone, and it's definitely not up there with one of my favourite genres, which is why I don't talk about it that much, because I'm very picky when it comes to fantasy, and I'm trying to find the right type of fantasy that I actually enjoy reading. I think I prefer urban fantasy, so kind of it being set in real life, and it just has like fantasy elements kind of embedded into the storyline. But this one I really enjoyed, I think purely because we do follow kind of three real people as such, and we kind of begin the story in kind of the real world and then them being taken to kind of this fantasy world. I think it's just the world of fairy. One thing about fantasy is the words are really made up. This is the part that I typically struggle with, is just because of the language that they use, a lot of it is made up. So for me, it's just a bit kind of, I don't really know what's going on. It's the same with ACOTAR or kind of those sort of books. You just kind of have to really learn the kind of terminology of fantasy books. However, the storyline of this is really good. We kind of follow a romance subplot. There's kind of betrayal in there. There's just kind of every element you want in a book, and I feel like this is it. The writing is super easy to follow. We've got three kind of main protagonists, sort of. They're all sisters, and essentially they kind of begin in this like real world, and there's a kind of fairy that comes to their door and basically takes them away. Follow Jude and her two sisters, and basically they see their parents get murdered in front of them, and there's this assassin that basically takes them away to fairy world or fairyland, wherever they're from. You kind of follow their story of like finding out about this world, and as I said, there's kind of like a romance subplot kind of embedded into this too, which is really good. So as I said, there's three books in the trilogy. I believe there's like a couple of other kind of spin-off books based on this world. I'd recommend checking into those too. However, the first book is The Cruel Prince. We then have The Wicked King, and then we've got The Queen of Nothing. I think I saw Hayley Pham read these and instantly I had to buy them. These were like some of the first books that I actually bought, kind of getting seriously back into reading. I just thought, why not? I thought I'd recommend these because they are, for a fantasy book, they are on the shorter side. Most fantasy books are quite long, so if you are someone who has maybe a shorter kind of attention span, I would thoroughly recommend these. They're super quick. Most of them are like under 400 pages long. I'd really recommend these. As I said, no particular order. We're just gonna go with random. Next up, Taylor Jenkins Reid. If you are familiar of the BookTok and Bookstagram, BookTube kind of world, you will have no doubt heard of Taylor Jenkins Reid. She is an incredible writer. She kind of predominantly talks about kind of historical kind of fiction as such, and these are probably two of her most popular books, and they are the two that I've read. The Seven Husbands of Evelyn, Hugo, and Daisy Jones and the Six. These two books are so incredibly written. I love them. I definitely preferred The Seven Husbands. This was one of the first, I think this was the first kind of viral book that I had read and just was not disappointed. I love this book with my whole heart. I still remember it to this day, and I read this book like two plus years ago, and I just loved every single minute of it. The emotions that I had in this book were just incredible. I get some people didn't like it, and that is fine, but some people absolutely loved this, and I was one of these people. I loved it. It was definitely up there with one of my favourite reads, still to this day, that I've probably ever read. Basically, we follow this kind of journalist who interviews Evelyn Hugo, who was like a big kind of famous actress, I think in the 50s. All the way through to the 80s, and kind of talks about her 7 husbands that she's had kind of along the journey. And this book, as I said, was just filled with emotion and kind of drama, and it was just the perfect book to read. I binged this in 2 days, and for me at the time that was like a really quick read, so I just loved it, and I urge every single person to read this. It's just so good. Then we have Daisy Jones and the Six. We kind of follow this band that were famous in the like late 70s, and basically nobody knows why they split. They were like huge, and nobody knows why they split, and we basically follow kind of like this interview with them throughout their kind of like time during the band, and it's really good because it's written like a script. So hang on, I'll show you the first page so I don't spoil anything for anyone, because I could have just given away a potential spoiler. Kind of written, so you've kind of got like Daisy, and then you've got like Simone Jackson, so it's kind of written in a kind of script like manner. This book once again was really good, and also the TV show was released on Amazon, I want to say, which I'm actually yet to watch. I should probably get into watching that. I've got a few other Taylor Jenkins Reid books, but I haven't read them yet, but they are very much on my to be read list. Okay, I'm going to talk about this book briefly, but it's one of these books that I urge every single person to read, and that is The Tattooist of Auschwitz by Heather Morris. This was the book that got me into reading. I have always been a big lover of historical fiction and kind of anything really informative. I love learning, so for me this was like the perfect book to pick up, and I'd heard that this was essentially a book that everybody should read at least once in their lifetime. I think I remember reading this forum of kind of like 10 or 50 books you should read before you like die, basically. It was a bit morbid, but this was on there. This was like one of the books that you have to read within your lifetime, and this book wholeheartedly changed my life. The way that I thought about things, the way that just it kind of just altered my brain chemistry. And this book is kind of a series, so it follows 3 different books. We've got The Tattooist of Auschwitz, Silka's Journey, and The Three Sisters. I'm yet to read The Three Sisters, which is kind of like the last installment of the series, but the TV show of The Tattooist of Auschwitz is coming out in May, I want to say. I am so excited to see how it is going to be televised. This book was just beautifully written. Heather Morris just absolutely aced this book. It is the most heart gut-wrenching book you will ever read in your life. Do not go in there without a box of tissues, because oh my goodness, this book was just life-changing. I loved it, and I thoroughly recommend it to anyone who kind of just wants to learn a little bit more. I would highly suggest this book. But it is one of those books, as I said, it was the book that got me into reading, and for that I have a lot to thank for it, because now reading, I couldn't imagine my life without reading, to be honest. That is one of the books that I thoroughly recommend. I think this is the last standalone book before I kind of go into the series, and that is If We Were Villains by M.L. Rio. This book was another one of those books that changed my brain chemistry. I read this last year. You guys would have seen it in a few of my kind of recent videos. It was a 5-star read for me. I loved it. I loved reading this book. Basically, it's a literary thriller. Now, crime, mystery, thriller is my absolute favourite genre to read. I was nervous about going into this book because of kind of mixed reviews. It's dark academia, literary thriller. It's kind of got everything you want in a book, to be honest, and this was just so well written. I loved it. Basically, we follow Oliver Marks, who has just served 10 years in prison for a crime he may or may not have committed, and essentially we follow his time at this academy called Delitcher Academy, which is kind of known for its like Shakespearean kind of, basically they just solely perform Shakespeare, telling Detective Colburn, who was the detective of this case, the kind of story of why he got served 10 years in prison for murder. This book is just incredibly written. We follow about probably 5 or 6 characters, I can't quite remember. I really want to get my hands on the kind of illustrated version, which is like a hardback. I think it was like a 10-year, is it 5 or 10 year like anniversary special edition book, and I really want to get my hands on it. Honestly, this book, I just loved every single minute of it. So please, if you take anything away out of this video, read all these books, in fact, because I will probably say this is a book you need to read because it's just so good. It's definitely more of kind of like your poetic kind of, it's more the writing that gets you grasped rather than, well, I say that, the plot was very good, the characters are very good, but the writing style kind of tops all of that, if you kind of get my vibe, you know? But yeah, worth a read. I'm gonna kind of go on to all my series. Now, I know I've talked about the Cruel Prince series, but these are kind of predominantly my, I'd probably say my 1, 2, 3, top 5 book series ever. Watch out. Okay, we're gonna start off with this one. I'm gonna go for my least favourite out of the 5, but as I said, this is my top 5. And also this is the series that I haven't, no, that's a lie, I haven't completed all of them. That is, oh, they are fully upside down, I'm so sorry. That is the Shatter Me series by Tahreh. I'm really not sure how to pronounce her name, but this lovely lady, has written the Shatter Me series, which is basically a YA dystopian fantasy book, and it is brilliant, so good. I am on to the 3rd book now, so I've still got 3 books left. It's a 6 series with novellas in between. I still haven't grasped the kind of knowledge of the novellas, and that's research I need to kind of complete. However, this is the series. There's 6 kind of main books and then novellas kind of in between, and no, you do not have to read the novellas in between the main books. They just kind of give you a bit more character insight and depth than if you were to just kind of go in between the normal books. And for me, I'm just going in between the normal books, and then I'll read the novellas kind of like in between. The series goes Shatter Me, Unravel Me, and Ignite Me. Then we have Defy Me. No, that's wrong. It's Ignite Me, Restore Me, Defy Me, and Imagine Me. This book just has a really cool concept. We follow, oh my god, I can't even remember her name, Juliet. Basically, she was held hostage by the re-establishment, which is kind of like the government that now run this world, and she gets captured, and she is basically kind of like, she's got these powers that she doesn't really know about until she kind of touches someone, and one touch can kill someone. I'm not spoiling anything, it is written on the back of the first book, just saying. I love it. It's so fast paced. It is just one of those books that will just grasp you straight away. I remember reading Shatter Me in like a day. Like, it was so quick for me. I loved it. The subplot of romance in it as well, which is really interesting, and it just gets better and better as the books go on. But I love the concept of it. I didn't think I'd enjoy it because I wasn't a big fan of the Hunger Games, but for this I actually really enjoyed it. So, well, enjoying it because I'm still reading it. Next up, we're gonna go for this one, Caravel by Stephanie Garber. I know this has kind of had a lot of mixed reviews, to be honest. However, I love it. I love Caravel so much. I am yet to read the last book. Caravel basically is a game on this island, and essentially you have to be invited to play this game. That is until, no, I'm not gonna say anything because it's not on the back of the book. Basically you play to kind of win this prize, which is like a single wish. So I don't really, you know, I'm not going to say anything too much more, but this is just filled with so much like action and once again another subplot of romance. It is just so good. I know not a lot of people have, like, as I said, there's been mixed reviews about this, but I loved it. I gave this book, I think I gave this 5 stars. I can't quite remember. But then you have Legendary, which basically you follow one POV in Caravel, you follow another POV in Legendary, and I'm not quite sure what you follow in Finale. There's 3 of them, and there is there's a 4th installment coming out this year, which is called Spectacular, and it's kind of set in the winter, which is really cool. But I really thoroughly recommend anybody to read Caravel. I love it so much. I love anything that's kind of like game-based book. I'm a very kind of, I love a game. I really do love a game. Okay, next up. Now, these are my top 3 series of all time. At number 3, we have Good Girl's Guide to Murder by Holly Jackson. This was another one of those series that really got me into reading. After I'd read The Tattooist of Auschwitz, I read A Good Girl's Guide to Murder, and I just loved it. Follow Pip, who is basically writing her EPQ for school, and she kind of rediscovers this case that kind of like shocked the town that she lives in, of Andy Bell, and she essentially wants to find out the truth on what happened, and she believes that the guy that got convicted isn't the guy that actually ended up murdering Andy Bell. This book, so good. I love it. I love it so much. You then have Good Girl Bad Blood, which is essentially kind of like, she then kind of creates a podcast because she's not writing for APQ anymore. She writes for a podcast. And then we have As Good as Dead, which is the last book, and this is a chunker. I love them all. I love them so much, and I'm just desperate to get my hands on Pip and Ravi again. Like, I just can't begin to describe the level of love I have for these books. I think I hold them so close to my heart purely because they were genuinely some of the best books that I've ever read, and just like the level of action and just the, honestly I can't. I just love these books so much. So please, if you haven't read them, go read them. They're YA mystery. Like, why would you not love them? I know the criticism that it gets is it's written in 3rd person, which for a lot of people it's not how they like to read, but I just feel like go over the 3rd person, read it, it's brilliant. At number 2, we have the Truly Devious series. This series was my series of the summer about a couple years ago, and I loved it so much. I literally read all 4 books, and then the 5th book came out and I read that as well. We follow Stevie Bell, who is a student at Ellingham Academy, and essentially there was a crime that happened like years ago at Ellingham Academy. You get into this academy based on a certain talent you have, and for Stevie Bell, that is solving like past crimes, and she's solving the Ellingham Academy murder that basically happened. So that follows the first 3 books in the trilogy. This, for some people, this series can be quite confusing. You follow, so you've got Truly Devious, which is the first book, then have The Vanishing Stare, and then you have The Hand on the Wall. You then have kind of a standalone, which is The Box in the Woods. So you follow the exact same characters, but they're going away for their summer vacation. And then you follow them again in another standalone, but they're going to London for their senior year. It's essentially all the same characters, which we just love. I'm yet to get the paperback of this one because I want to complete my collection. I just love these books so much, like the character development, Stevie, everyone. Like, this series has such a big place in my heart. I just love it, and I really, really want to reread it again. It was just, I wish I could read it for the first time again. I just wish, because it was just so good. Probably no surprise to any of you that this series has hit my #1 category. Magnolia Parks by Jessa Hastings. Ladies and gentlemen, this series has been a chokehold. I love it. I am very sad that this is the last installment of Magnolia and BJ. I would cry. No, I have not yet read it. Please don't give me any spoilers. I have been avoiding spoilers like the freaking plague. Yes, I am also that author. I'm also that reader that has the new covers, and I also have the old covers, and I will collect all the covers that come out to the day I die, basically. I'm not going to go into kind of what the premise of these books are, other than it's a drama mixed in with a closed door romance. There's a lot that goes on. It's set in London. It's kind of like Gossip Girl based in London, essentially. First book is Magnolia Parks, which you follow Magnolia and BJ's POV. You then have Daisy Hates, which is Daisy, Julian and Christian's POVs. That's the first 2 books. Magnolia Parks and Daisy Hates, they follow like there's always like 2 books that follow each other, the same timeline, but through the different characters. You then have Magnolia Parks The Long Way Home, and then you have Daisy Hates The Great Undoing, which follow the same timeline, and then you have Magnolia Parks Into the Dark, and then you have what will be the new installment of Daisy Hates, and probably the last. But oh my god, I'm very excited. I do need to read Daisy Hates The Great Undoing though. I've read the first 3. I need to read the last 2. But I loved every single minute of them, and this book is full of drama, and kind of there's a lot of toxic energy in these books. However, it's kind of like the character development and the kind of romance between the 2, and that's kind of what grasps and sucks you into this world. It is just so addictive. I don't know what Jessa Hastings puts in her writing, but it is just addictive, and I love it. I love every minute of it. Don't get me wrong, get your box of tissues, but it is so good. So good. So, I don't know if I've done my job by convincing you to read books that I would thoroughly recommend for anybody who is new into reading. I feel like, as I said at the beginning of the video, series are just kind of easier to get into, purely because once you get that attachment to a character, you want to kind of follow their development throughout all the books. And for me, I love a series. I love being able to sort of latch onto a character and be able to go through the books. Yes, I'm very sad when they end, but I do love them. And for me, these are all my favourite books, all my favourite series that I would thoroughly recommend to every single one of you who's watching this video right now. But yeah, I hope that if you are kind of looking to get into reading, please read just what makes you happy. Reading is not a competition. You do not have to read books that have gone viral. You do not have to read, you know, you can read whatever you want to read. So please just make sure that you are kind of reading for pleasure rather than it being a competition. Reading is purely for entertainment. So with that said, I hope you guys enjoyed this video. If you did, don't forget to give the video a big old thumbs up, subscribe down below, and don't forget to turn on the little post notification bell so you're notified every time I upload a new video, and I'll see you guys in next week's video. Bye guys!